Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. My name is Astrid Bochnakian, and I'm with Geneva International Centre for Justice, and I have the honor of moderating today's discussion, hosted by the Palestinian Center for Return. I would like to remind everyone that pictures are not permitted in this room, except for photographers designated by the organization. For decades, the Palestinian people have endured systematic oppression, displacement, and repeated cycles of violence, with Gaza bearing the heaviest toll. Since the intensification of the war in Gaza almost 2 years ago, numerous NGOs have described Israel's action as genocidal. This assessment has now been acknowledged at the international level by the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, which has formally recognized that genocide is taking place in Gaza. Today's event, Ending the Genocide in Gaza, seeks to shed light on the methods of this genocide, namely killings, ethnic cleansing, and starvation, and to explore the avenue of accountability and justice. Our discussion will be divided in two parts. First, all three of our speakers will have 15 minutes each for their presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A session for at least 10 minutes. Without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker. Julie Billaud, Dr. Julie Billaud, is a scholar of human rights, humanitarianism, and international governance. She is a professor of anthropology at the Geneva Graduate Institute. She will talk about how famine is engineered in Gaza through what some scholars have called the starvation experiment. Dr. Billaud, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. So, is this working? Yes?
You need to press.
I have to press it. Okay, thank you very much for this introduction and for inviting me to speak on this very important issue. So, as you all know, I guess, in August 2025, the Famine Review Committee, the HRC, determined that famine is occurring in Gaza based on the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, IPC Phase 5, which is the most authoritative expert mechanism for monitoring and measuring malnutrition worldwide. Reports from major human rights organizations such as the International Crisis Group, Forensic Architecture, Amnesty International find that famine is man-made and the outcome of a deliberate strategy of starvation carried out by Israel as part of its military strategy. Starvation is used as a means to forcibly displace Gazans to the south of the Strip, conquer and annex the territory and destroy the social fabric. Israel's most senior officials publicly deny both intent to starve Gaza and the existence of mass starvation there, attributing aid restriction to military necessity. Yet, Israeli military officers privately acknowledge the reality, while prominent cabinet members openly approve of it. In August 2024, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has said, I quote, "Starving Gaza's residents to death would be just and moral until the remaining Israeli hostages in the Strip are freed," end quote. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has said, I quote, "The only aid entering Gaza should be to aid voluntary immigration, insisting that while hostages remain captive, the enemy should get no food, no electricity, and no other aid," end quote. These extreme voices reflect a widespread anti-Palestinian animus according to which mass civilian suffering is acceptable. To justify disrupting and withholding aid, Israel has repeatedly claimed that Hamas is stealing, diverting, and profiting from humanitarian assistance, yet no evidence has been found so far to support these allegations. Starvation is both a military strategy and an experiment Israel is making to manage its diplomatic relation and international image. Since late 2023, Israel has restricted the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza in a manner that reveals a distinct and recurring pattern: sharp drops in food and supply deliveries during periods of intensified military operations, followed by temporary increases when international pressure mounts in response to the IPC and FRC's warnings of famine. This pattern has since been described by conflict analysis as a starvation experiment. The hallmark of this strategy is not the total denial of food, but a calculation to adjust the flow of aid just enough to avoid triggering a formal famine declaration. Since it started its military operation, Israel has implemented several blockade cycles. In every case, a sharp restriction of aid coincided with major offensives. Relief only increased after major actors, especially the United States, raised concern about impending famine as identified by the IPC or FRC. Humanitarian officials noted that each increase was short-lived, wholly inadequate to meet the scale of need, and timed to ease diplomatic pressure rather than avert catastrophe. But Gaza starvation rationing started well before October 7th. The siege that has been in place since October 2023 fits a broader pattern that has been unfolding for decades: deprivation as a deliberate policy. In 2006, the Israeli government retaliated against Hamas election for the Palestinian Authority legislature by further restriction, culminating in a land, aid, and sea blockade on the Gaza Strip in 2007. The blockade was initially imposed as a temporary act, but became permanent after Hamas took control of the Strip. This blockade is considered collective punishment of a civilian population, which amounts to war crime. The blockade includes reducing the quantity of food per person to the minimum calories necessary for survival. Senior advisor to the then Prime Minister Ehud Olmert is widely reported of having said in 2006 already, I quote, "The idea is to put the Palestinians on a diet, but not to make them die of hunger," end quote. In 2012, human rights organizations already reported that Israel used calorie counts to limit Gaza food during blockade. Such a policy of starvation rationing consists in the provision of rations that do not meet the minimum nutritional thresholds for human health. As a result, already in 2018, the UN warned that Gaza was at risk of becoming unlivable due to deteriorating conditions. By 7 October 2023, approximately half of the population of Gaza was reportedly food insecure, and more than 80% relied on humanitarian aid. The Israeli military has repeatedly targeted aid distribution across Gaza since its genocidal campaign began in October 2023. During the first year of the war alone, from October 2023 to October 2024, forensic architecture documented more than 322 attacks on aid, including aid workers and civilians seeking aid, as well as 22 attacks on convoys of trucks transporting aid, including trucks belonging to the World Central Kitchen. The findings of forensic architecture's investigation showed that Israel relentlessly attacked aid infrastructure, such as warehouses, aid convoys, aid personnel, bakeries, and communal kitchens. According to forensic architecture again, Israel has destroyed hundreds of dunams of agricultural lands, depriving Palestinians in the Gaza Strip of resources vital to survival. This destruction is part of a larger Israeli plan that dates back to last October. Under this plan, Israeli forces have worked to eliminate almost 80% of the agricultural land in the Gaza Strip from use by Palestinians. The destruction has extended to Gaza's greenhouses and water sources, with 71% of greenhouses and 83% of agricultural wells also damaged, according to the FAO. In addition to the destruction of agricultural and food infrastructure, Israel has deliberately destroyed water and fishing infrastructure. Since October 2023, Israel's military operations have repeatedly targeted water facilities, wells, pipelines, desalination units, and sewage systems. 89% of Gaza's water and sanitation infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed by Israel's forces, leaving over 90% of household water insecure. According to the FAO again, Israeli military restriction on fishing activities in Gaza significantly intensified after October 7, and fishers reported that they have been repeatedly attacked on shore and at sea by the Israeli military. In addition to rationing the Gazan population, Israel has dismantled Gaza's long-standing civilian aid system which was overseen by UNRWA, and replaced it with a militarized one, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, designed to further Israeli military and political goals while controlling and starving the population. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, backed by the US and Israel, distributes limited rations through military control stations, creating dependency on a system that observers argue is deadly by design. While the previous UN-led distribution network operated about 400 sites across Gaza, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, guided by armed private security contractors, has set up only 4 mega sites for Gaza's population of about 2 million. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution model weaponizes aid and concentrates it in the south to force people to leave northern Gaza, as planned by the Israeli military. All the distribution sites are inside areas officially designated as active combat zones. The station open only briefly, often for a few minutes, and with little advance notice. To avoid missing distributions, families have to relocate closer to them. Entry is slow and tightly controlled. People are funneled through narrow fence corridors resembling cattle chutes. Reports indicate Israeli forces and contractors have repeatedly used live ammunition to control crowds, killing hundreds of Palestinians. The dry rations distributed by the GHF without healthcare and clean water creates conditions for forced displacement from Gaza that Netanyahu euphemistically calls voluntary immigration, now a stated requirement for ending the genocide. There is strong evidence that Israel's militarized aid system starves, displaces, and reconcentrates Palestinians, increases violence towards those seeking aid, and dismantles the civil order and social fabric of Gaza. The Genocide Convention defined the crime of genocide as, I quote, the intentional destruction of a group as such, in whole or in part. End quote. Destruction of a group can involve mass killing, but it can also occur through other means, such as mass starvation. According to famine expert Alex Deval, mass starvation is both the biological starvation of many individuals and a social phenomenon. It undermines the group as a whole through a form of social death, stripping people of their dignity, causing humiliation, and breaking down social bonds, social norms, and everything else that makes society, community, and family function in a meaningful way. This can occur even without a so-called humanitarian aid system through starvation rationing, the provision of rations that fail to meet the minimum nutritional threshold for human health, and rations that are delivered in an inhuman manner. In Gaza, starvation rationing is happening under Israel's military model of aid distribution. This can be considered genocidal in that it is both killing Palestinians and destroying the group as a whole through collective dehumanization, dismantling the social fabric, and separating the group from its land. The horrors of deaths by starvation will intensify if Israel is not stopped. Already 500,000 people in Gaza are starving. The famine in Gaza, deliberately engineered and perpetrated by Israel and enabled by private and security actors, is an affront to humanity. We therefore recommend and demand that the UN member states act under Uniting for Peace in line with General Assembly Resolution 377-5 and request a peace operation. The opening of all the crossing to unrestricted humanitarian access under direct UN oversight. The immediate suspension of militarized aid mechanisms, including those that have led to widespread killings at aid distribution points. Member states with ports in the Mediterranean Sea urgently deploy emergency navies carrying humanitarian aid and offer protection to the global Sumut flotilla. The authorization of UN-led international humanitarian convoy with full UN authority to coordinate and supervise all crossings into Gaza. And finally, we demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Billaud. Now I'll give the floor to our second speaker. Nijmeh Ali is a political scientist whose research and writing focus on resistance and the politics of Palestine in global context, and she is currently a Global Academy Fellow with the Middle East Studies Association, or MESA. She will discuss the patterns of genocidal destruction in Gaza and ways to apply international pressure on Israel. Dr. Ali, you have 15 minutes.
15 minutes to cover everything. It's challenging. Okay. So we meet in a moment of profound urgency, witnessing the ongoing genocide in Gaza. This is not a fight that will end just in a ceasefire, and we should admit it, although it's the first and a fundamental step to stop the suffering in Gaza. Yet what I want to speak about it today is that genocide in Gaza is a deliberate destruction of people, a genocide project that international community deals with and will continue to deal with in the future, even after the ceasefire. So if we look in the, this is why my talk today will focus on two parts. The first part is patterns of destruction in Gaza, which reveal the genocide project, how it works and sustained. While the second part will discuss the strategies for international pressure to dismantle this genocidal project. So if we look at this slide, so we have, when we speak about Gaza today, we are not only describing the aftermath of October 7. We are describing a pattern, a cycle of destruction and siege that has continued for decades, but has reached genocidal intensity in the past 2 years. Based on international human rights reports, 5 interlocking patterns were identified in the genocide in Gaza, which is the, if we look at this slide, the erasure of civilians' life, weaponizing humanitarian necessities, displacement as ethnic cleansing, destruction of social and cultural infrastructure, impunity, and normalization of genocide. So if I want to start with this slide, there is a consistent pattern that Israel have intentionally killed and seriously harmed unprecedented number of Palestinians in Gaza since the 7th of October. More than 50% of those who were killed were women, children, and elderly persons. Civilian objects that were essential to Palestinians, such as very basic things, such as bakeries, for example. It was by November 2023 that was 0 bakeries in North Gaza. So we are speaking about this is how they sustained the genocidal project in Israel, in Gaza, by Israel. So if I want to look on the, if we want to look in the health sector, for example, maybe there is, no, the education sector collapse. So there is a consistent pattern that, no, this is up. This is the education system. The majority of Gaza schools and universities are destroyed, denying hundreds of thousands of children and young people any chance of education. So if you want to put it in a, just to give numbers and context, we are speaking about 70% of the schools building in Gaza are destroyed. More than 57 university buildings had been completely destroyed. This leaves us, just imagine the amount, the numbers of students and children in the age of schooling that they cannot go to school and have education. So this leaves us with almost 600,000 children out of schools and about 80,000 students out of universities. Regarding the health sector, and we are just in pattern 1, which is the erasure of civilian life. So if we want to speak about the health sector, so today only 17 of Gaza's 36 hospitals remain partly functional, serving 2 million people.
If I want to just translate it to how many beds they have, it's 1,500 beds for 2 million people. So medical aid is blocked, hospitals are bombed, and medical teams and equipment, including ambulances, are targeted. If we want to go, which is kind of related to the previous speakers, weaponizing humanitarian necessities. So water, electricity, food, and medicines have been systematically cut off. Starvation has been used as a weapon of war. This is not incidental. It's a method of control designed to make survival itself impossible and to push the Palestinians in Gaza to move all the time, looking for a place, not just for a place, a safe place to stay, but also for services. Pattern 3, which is the displacement as strategy of ethnic cleansing. Repeated orders for mass evacuation, often to what is called safe zones, that are themselves then bombed, which means there is the illusion of safe zones. Created forced displacement on a catastrophic scale. Nearly the entire population of Gaza has been displaced multiple times. Multiple times does not reflect that there is family that was displaced for 26 times. So this is the numbers that we are dealing with. Pattern 4 is the destruction of social and cultural infrastructure. So it's not only bodies and buildings being targeted, but memory, culture, and future. We are speaking about universities, libraries, cultural centers, archives that have been bombed. And the archives for the Palestinians are very important because this is the history of the Palestinians since the Nakba. So the archives of the UNRWA, for example, I don't know, but I think that it could be also a movie because they managed to smuggle part of the archives of the UNRWA just in the beginning of the war, and now it's in Jordan. But and it was, if you are interested in it, it's like there is a good article in Le Monde about it. It's in English and French. So what I want to say that when we have this destruction of social and cultural infrastructure, because it's very important to understand this is the attempts to destroy the knowledge and resilience that allow the people to endure and to stay in their place. This is their past, and this is something that they are very related to. And then this is one of the things that I want all the time to speak, impunity and normalization of genocide. War crimes have been documented by UN bodies, by human rights organizations, and journalists, yet without enforcement. Israel acts with the confidence of impunity, with powerful allies shielded diplomatically and militarily. The normalization of such impunity allows genocide to continue or to be copied in other places in the world. And this should be also on the table when we discuss Palestine, because it's not just about Palestine. Taking together these elements or these patterns, we can see that it's, I can't move it. We can see that it's not a random act of war. They are a systemic pattern of, just to make this.
I don't see the mouse. Where is it?
I don't know. Oh, okay. It's okay.
There you go.
Okay. This is one. So if we take this together, we see that it's no, it's not. It's a systematic pattern of destruction, the destruction of life, infrastructure, culture, and future possibilities, And they correspond directly to the definition of genocide in international law, the intent to destroy in a whole or in a part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So if you wanna, I wanna share with you one photo to see before and after. What does it mean, destruction? I can't. So this is from Jabalia refugee camp. So this is before and this is after. So you can see the meaning of what does it mean. Okay. People would ask what should be done. The answer is pressure. And if it's not working, so we need more pressure. And this brings me to the second part of my talk, which deals with ways to apply international pressure. And here I want to focus on what states, governments, and international bodies can and must do, because this is where the power lies. So if this slides, just like we have 5 strategies that can be applied in order to dismantle the genocidal project that Israel is trying to sustain. Diplomatic and political pressure, legal accountability, economic and corporate pressure, cultural, academic, professional pressure, civil society and grassroots mobilization. So I will start with the first one. So states must end the practice of empty condemnation while continuing business as usual. This means moving to actions to put pressure on Israel. It starts with arms embargoes. States should suspend all arms and technologies transferred to Israel while war crimes continue. The second issue that can be done in this topic, suspension of cooperation agreements, including trade, research, and security deals, until compliance with international law is demonstrated. The third thing that can be done, suspension from international forums. When a state defies the UN Charter and the ICJ rulings, it cannot be treated as a normal member of the international community. And this is very important also to address since we are here. The legal accountability, support the International Court of Justice. Already 14 states have filed declaration of intervention. More governments should follow this step. Strengthening the International Criminal Court track. Pressure to prioritize cases on Gaza and issue warrants against those responsible. There is also something which is very important, and the association Hind Rajab is trying they are very active in this front. So targeted sanctions against leader, official, and commanders directed involved in genocide. When we speak about economic, so state sanction, freeze everything that can be done, restrict trade, and stop settlement goods for entering international market, divestment from complicit companies. And I think that it's very important to use the materials that we have. Francesca Albanese, she issued a great report on this and on the complicity of a lot of companies in genocide and how they benefit from it. So when we speak about cultural, academic, and professional pressure, end partnership with Israeli institutions directly complicit in a military-industry complex, and support academic and cultural boycott while protecting individual scholars and artists who are trying also to maintain the Palestinian narrative. When I speak about civil society, while the responsibility rests with state civil society movements, unions, students, faith groups, NGOs, organizations play a vital role in sustaining pressure and keeping Palestine on the global agenda. Their mobilization gives legitimacy and urgency to diplomatic action. This is why it's important to building coalition to keep Palestine on the global agenda and to engage in direct action, which means mass demonstration, to be all the time in the street and to have this coalition. 2 points to consider that I would like also to speak about. By this, I will end my presentation. The question of strategies to put pressure in Israel is not only a Palestinian test. It is the UN, it's the test. It is the test of whether international law, the UN Charter, and human rights have meaning at all. And remember, sustained principle and organized international pressure can shift realities. In this slide, I will mention South Africa and how a lot of pressure helped to dismantle the apartheid in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Now I'll give the floor to Moderator. Ahmed is a solicitor advocate and has recently joined the International Centre for Justice for Palestinians as head of legal department. He has an abundance of experience with criminal law, and prosecutions. Prior to joining ICJP, he was a legal manager at the Crown Prosecution Service, where he held several lead roles, including hate crime. At the ICJP, he is prioritizing the work with regards to criminal complaints and to make sure prosecutions are brought in the UK domestic courts. In addition to his role with ICJP, he is a visiting lecturer at the University of Hertfordshire. He will focus his presentation on criminal complaints in the UK and in other international justice work undertaken. Mr. Ahmed, you have 15 minutes. Oops. My apologies.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the invitation by Palestinian Return Centre. International Centre of Justice for Palestinians is an independent organization combined of lawyers, politicians and academics who support the rights of Palestinians, and we aim to protect their rights through the lens of law. At the ICJ, our objective is to coordinate and support legal work which supports the rights of Palestinians in Israel, the occupied Palestinian territories, and the wider diaspora. We have several legal projects simultaneously working. However, I've decided to talk about 5 of those today. Criminal complaints within the UK, the gathering of our evidence, evidence provided by our team to South Africa's legal team, arms case in the UK, and Global 195. Starting with the criminal complaints within the UK, we have lodged complaints to Counter-Terrorism Command of Metropolitan Police in London. These are in relation to alleged complicity of 4 of the UK government ministers in war crimes committed in Gaza under applicable UK legislations. In those complaints, we have provided evidence in relation to criminal responsibility of senior UK politicians, as well as Israeli ministers and private British individuals. Those complaints followed by the notices of intention to prosecute by the ICJP for any complicity in war crimes in Gaza. Secondly, we have provided lodged starvation complaints against UK ministers. These complaints included 800 pages of evidence that was provided to Scotland Yard War Crimes Team, and this is on the crimes of starvation as weapon of war and willfully causing great suffering to Palestinian civilian population. Both willfully causing great suffering and starvation as weapon of war are war crimes under UK and international law. The Rome Statute of International Criminal Court and the Criminal Court Act 2001 have also considered that as war crimes, in addition to 4th Geneva Convention. Finally, we have lodged criminal complaints against British-born Israeli government officials for aiding, abetting, inciting and conspiring with government of Israel to commit war crimes. These are intentionally using starvation as method of warfare and willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to Palestinian civilians on Gaza. In all these complaints, evidence was obtained from first-hand witnesses and medical professionals, and these were the core basis of our factual and legal analysis. The evidence gathered from medical professionals supported findings including malnourishment, attacks against hospitals and medical infrastructure, alongside other infrastructures, the obstruction of humanitarian aid getting into Gaza, lack of medical supplies, mass forced displacement of Palestinian population, and the deliberate targeting of civilians. This leads me to my second point of gathering evidence. We have been documenting crimes committed in Gaza from the very start. Since October 2023, ICJP has established its own investigation unit, which aimed to collect first-hand witness accounts of Israeli crimes being committed in Gaza. We have collected statements from medical professionals who were deployed in Gaza, covering 11 hospitals. We have also collected statements from Palestinian victims who were evacuated for medical treatment, documenting several crimes including starvation, disproportionate attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure, forcible transfer, and creating conditions that bring about destruction of the Palestinian people. The gathering of evidence is an ongoing process, and we continue to work with witnesses, both medical professionals and Palestinian civilians, to make sure their accounts are captured in evidential format. The evidence is meticulously collected by ICJP's investigation team, and it meets the evidential standards required by UK courts as well as international criminal courts. The South Africa legal team used our evidence collection. We provided South Africa legal team with all the evidence gathered to that point and continue to share the evidence collected by our investigation team. This was vital to ensure the first-hand witness statements are used as factual basis for the case brought under Genocide Convention in the ICJ against Israel. Our evidence was highly relied upon in formulating the arguments relating to using starvation as a weapon of war, evidence of malnourishment, and other acts that are being considered as ones conducted to bring about the destruction of the Palestinian people by Israel. Fourthly, the arms case in the UK. On 6th of December 2023, legal proceedings were commenced by Al-Haq and the Global Legal Action Network. This was formally supported by the ICJP. And this legal challenge was against the government's failure to abide by its domestic and international legal obligations in relation to the clear and obvious risk that UK-made arms be used to commit international humanitarian law breaches and violations in Gaza. ICJP provided GLAN and Al-Haq with evidence from British medical professionals whose safe house was targeted by likely F-35 jets. In September 2024, the government thereafter instituted a partial suspension on all arms which it claimed were liable to be used by the Israeli military in Gaza, suspending 29 of 350 export licenses for Israel. However, the government exempted parts of F-35 fighter jets program from this suspension, despite the F-35 government program being one of the UK's most significant contribution to Israeli military capabilities. This was justified on the basis that a suspension of F-35 licenses could not be implemented without causing disruption to the global space pool and the interest of international peace and security, thus override the risk of international humanitarian law breaches. That claim was challenged in the High Court, and in June 2025, the High Court decided to dismiss that challenge. The court's main concern was not that the UK government's decision was justifiable, but the court was not willing to second-guess a decision which would involve consideration of high foreign relations and national security policy. This was a contested area, but the courts were reluctant to rule on this. The court did not therefore rule that UK's decision was lawful in international human rights and humanitarian law. It concluded only the UK's government view of these obligations was a tenable one. This test is controversial. However, ICJP's efforts does not stop there. As well as directly pressurizing the UK government to suspend arms sales to Israel, ICJP has also pursued other avenues through the lens of law to create changes on arms sales. This campaign correlated closely with ICJP's campaign for universities to divest from investments in arms companies, including the successful campaign against Trinity College, Cambridge. In June last year, ICJP also informed directors of arms companies that they face potential criminal liability for atrocity crimes. These actions were taken alongside our coalition partners. The letters were sent to directors of 20 arms companies in the UK. ICJP will continue to work towards a complete cessation of arms exports to Israel. Finally, I talk about our Global 195 project. Global 195 is a worldwide legal coalition dedicated to holding accountable Israeli and dual national individuals alleged to have committed war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza. The coalition firstly seeks to coordinate international accountability efforts at a time when International Criminal Court faces sustained political attacks, including sanctions and threats by Israel and its allies. The coalition is designed to push law enforcement agencies worldwide to uphold their legal obligations by investigating alleged perpetrators present in their territory and jurisdiction. It also seeks to broaden the scope of accountability, not only targeting political figures or decision makers, but also individuals who have facilitated or participated in the commission of grave crimes in Gaza. Global 195 was announced alongside the submission of complaints by partners in 7 jurisdictions. These were followed by further submissions on an ad hoc basis regarding IDF soldiers traveling to different countries. The coalition continues to work with partners to grow its network and expand submissions to additional jurisdictions. Global 195 actions have taken place in countries across the world, including Malaysia, Turkey, Norway, Canada, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Greece, Romania, Hungary, and we have just launched submissions in Albania through our local partners last week. Finally, I would like to mention that our vision at the ICJP through different legal projects is that from top to the bottom of the chain of command, those complicit in war crimes and crimes against humanity must be brought to justice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed, and thank you to our other speakers. Now I'd like to open the floor for questions. We'll go by rounds if there are any questions. Yes, you can start and I'll take other questions.
Good afternoon all. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am Mahendran from south part of India. I belongs to this UPSI. Today we heard about Palestine where civilians are facing hunger, thirst and denial of humanitarian relief in violation of international law. But this is not an isolated case. In Sri Lanka, particularly during the final stages of the war in 2009, the deliberate restriction of food and medicine to civilians in the so-called no-fire zones caused immense suffering and death. From Gaza to Sri Lanka, from Yemen to Sudan, the weaponization of hunger shows a recurring pattern. Starvation is used as a tool of domination and even extermination. If international law clearly prohibits starvation as a method of warfare, why do victims continue to be failed by accountability mechanisms, selective applications of justice, risk normalizing this crime and emboldening perpetrators? How can we close the accountability gap so that starvation crimes are prosecuted consistently, whether in Palestine, Sri Lanka or elsewhere? Should the Rome Statute be amended to explicitly cover non-international armed conflicts where starvation is most frequently used. When early warning mechanism can the UN develop to identify deliberate starvation before it leads to famine or mass death? Thank you.
Is there any other question, or can we start with the answer? Okay. Would you like to take this question?
I'll start in relation to the accountability. It is important to gather evidence from the start. When we talk about the international law, before we start talking about the changes to brought, it is important to understand the mechanism is there, the law is there, and what we have to work towards is gathering the evidence from the very start. And this is why at the ICJP we have started gathering evidence from day one when this war started. And the evidence gathering did not mean that we were preparing a case for the future. It just meant that the evidence should be gathered at the earliest opportunity and recorded safely. That evidence, as mentioned earlier in my presentation, was used by South Africa legal team, and it same applies in other parts of the country. When situations that of such kind arises, NGOs, civil societies must work together to make sure the evidence is gathered at the earliest opportunity so that it's in a presentable way when the time comes of accountability. What we cannot do is change the system thinking it's not working when we are trying the system. It is slow process. The legal process, even in domestic cases, is very slow. So when it comes to international cases, it becomes slower. And some of those people that should be held accountable are at the highest of the offices sitting there. So that sometimes takes time and years for them to come out of the office and then be held accountable when they don't hold those powers. Anything to add?
No, I think it's perfect.
I'm coming from resistance. Is it working? I'm coming from resistance studies. Everything, like, you know, when I see these kind of things, my first response is pressure and more pressure, which means that, you know, it's kind of bringing together the work of the NGOs, the legal terms, because we see things, and this matters, as you said, it's like, it's not unique to Palestine. This the weaponization of starvation has been adopted in different places in the world. And this is why I say in my presentation that it's not just Palestine, it may be copied in other conflicts. And this is why we should put pressure in all the stages and aspects that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Is there? We cannot hear you.
Hallo, es tut mir leid, ich spreche kurze Zeit mit Deutsch. Ich bin Dr. Media Sheikha. Meine Frage, welche Herausforderungen in 6 Sessions Sie erzählen über Palästinas machen؟ بدي أحكي كمان بالعربي، شو هي التحديات والتوقعات اللي أنتم بتشوفوها بدورة 60 حول قضية فلسطين؟ شكرا.
What are the challenges and what are the, like that would be in the...
No, repeat it or not.
Do you want to repeat the question in English?
In English. I think that it was, what are the challenges in the 60 round for Palestine? In 60 session for Palestine, yeah. What are the challenges? You want to take it? No.
So I don't even understand.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I don't understand the question. I don't know the question. I don't know what
I'm gonna speak in Arabic now. تقدري تحكي ايش قصدك بالتحديات بخصوص ايش اكثر هيك تفصلي على اساس انه احنا نعرف نجاوب.
هلا هون بالمجلس انحكى كثير عن حول القضيه الفلسطينيه. انا بدي اعرف بعد ما نطلع من هون شو حاطين نقاط لحتى هاي النقاط تتنفذ في المستقبل، لانه كثير قضايا انحكت حول القضيه الفلسطينيه، وللاسف نحن كل مره نحضر المجلس وعم نحكي كثير كلماتنا وما عم نوصل لنتيجه بالنسبه للقضيه الفلسطينيه. شكرا.
Okay, there is a lot of speaking going on when it comes to Palestine, but then like we cannot reach the practical points or practical strategies or practical actions. And this is the questions mainly: what are the challenges and what can be done to make it practical?
Well, I think I think we've made a number of recommendations in all our presentations, right? So there are a number of things that states can do, you as diplomats should do, which is, try to ensure that the Uniting for Peace, General Assembly Resolution 377 request is activated. You can ask, put pressure on Israel to open all the crossing. You could, ensure that the global Sumud flotilla receive protections. I mean, as states, you can actually act. So we are here to encourage you to do what you can do as states. I mean, these entire systems rely on states doing their jobs. So please do your job.
Can I finally add to that?
Yeah.
The actions or challenges just does not come up on the face of it when we think about taking action at the International Criminal Court or International Court of Justice. It comes domestically as well, as mentioned by my colleague. As ICJP, we target at the ground level as well. We write to different countries to take action against the IDF soldiers when they travel to their countries, including for holidays. We write to companies who are providing arms to Israel as well, that they could be complicit in war crimes by providing those arms. So all these mechanisms by which Israel gets their weapons, gets their money, that could be targeted as well at the source domestically.
And maybe just to say one word, it's sanctions, to push for sanctions. This is the only thing that can help and put pressure. I'm going to just give one example. There was few months ago, and I think maybe by the end of the last year, that somebody mentioned in Europe that they will cut the fund from the Marie Curie to the universities in Israel. And then just after that declaration, 1 week after that, and the genocide has been going on for 1 year so far at that time, 100 Israeli academics sent a letter to the Israeli government speaking about it. Sanctions works. So if you have the power to do it, do sanctions. Thank you.
Last question.
Unfortunately, we are running out of time. I'm sorry if we cannot take your questions, sir. Thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you for everybody who joined us today.